But I think that strategy can work. And I think it's regrettable that the Hamas and also the Hezbollah are convinced that the only strategy that can work is a military strategy. I just don't think that's correct. And it has nothing to do with preaching. They have the right to use armed force to resist. I have no problem with that. They don't have the right to target civilians. I think that's obvious. I do think, personally, I can see the argument for belligerent reprisals. That's a personal opinion. But on the other hand, leaving all of that military stuff on the side, I think there is another option which can work. And I wish it would be tried.
Thank you.
Questions, obviously. It's useful, but
It's just a question more, because the first actually we had this when we were about that just trying Hamas to actually get rid of the current environment. But I'm curious about your stance on Hamas as a government in Palestine, not the explanation to Israel, but the position to Israel.
Well, I really don't think I have any right to comment on that. It was a free and fair election, and that's who they elected. I mean, who are we in the West to second-guess their choices? My country elected Bush twice. The Italians elected Berlusconi, a complete lunatic. The French elect Sarkozy, an imbecile. You elect Blair, a freak. So who are we to tell them who they should elect to office? And anyhow, they never, Hamas never had a chance to govern. The moment they came to power, the brutal sanctions were imposed on them. And brutal sanctions, then there begins a struggle for survival. The survival of the fittest. And everyone starts fighting for the crumbs. And it gets ugly. I don't know how Hamas would have ruled. I don't think they were ever given a reasonable chance to rule. We have to bear in mind who the Americans think are, when your British government, they think are the desirable ones. These completely degenerate hoodlums called the Palestinian Authority. These are pretty gruesome characters. This Guy Dalen, he's like out of some mafia film, mafia movie. His stock in trade is breaking kneecaps and extracting fingernails. And he's the Democrat, that we're supporting. This flaming imbecile Mahmoud Abbas. And people forget, or people don't know, Mahmoud Abbas, how many of you know he's a doctor? Yeah, Mahmoud Abbas, he's not your run-of-the-mill imbecile. He's a doctor. And he got his doctorate in the Soviet Union. He got his doctorate by writing a dissertation denying the Nazi Holocaust. And he was so thrilled with his dissertation, he then went to Beirut and he self-published it as a book. So, we all hear about, the terrible, evil, wicked Mr. Ahmadinejad. He's, sin of sin, horror of horrors. He's a Holocaust denier. But our favorite democratic ally among the Palestinians, Mahmoud Abbas, he too is a Holocaust denier. In fact, that's where he got his doctoral degree, from denying it. So some of you are probably wondering, that's odd. I thought we don't like Holocaust deniers. But that's because most of you are very naive young people attending Oxford and starry-eyed, and you don't understand these basics of international politics, which I know he's trying to understand. He said he wants to be in the Foreign Office, and he's trying to understand how international politics works. And he told me he's now reading Kissinger's book on diplomacy. He's going to figure out. But the real thing, the real way you understand it is you have to see The Wizard of Oz. How many of you have seen The Wizard of Oz? How many of you? Somewhere. And remember The Wizard of Oz, that there are good witches and bad witches. The good witches are like Glinda, what's her name? The bad witch, I always forget her name. And it's the same thing with Holocaust deniers. There are good Holocaust deniers, Mahmoud Abbas, and there are bad Holocaust deniers, like Mr. Ahmadinejad. And you're a good Holocaust denier if you're a stooge of the United States, and also if you're very stupid, because we like stupid Arabs. And you are a bad Holocaust denier if you think that you shouldn't or don't have to follow American orders.
If I could take your question.
Yes. Thank you very much for your very informative lecture. I think it's very important to have people like you talking all over the Western world. My observation is that people all remember or have somehow forgotten that a month or so before the massacre in Gaza, there was a women's demonstration on the border of Rafah, and they did cross over, but they were brought back by the Egyptian government. This brings me to my actual question, which is, I have the feeling somehow that the war or this conflict is being put in a too small framework, and that is Israel and the Arabs or Palestinians, and I think it's a much more complex and widespread conflict, because we all know that Israel couldn't do what it did without American support. So I think this point has to be a bit, highlighted. And what America can do, not just what people, students on the street here, I believe they have very important role, but I think, we should be looking a bit further.
I think it is further. Israel wanted to so-called restore its deterrence capacity, not with Gaza in mind. They don't care about Gaza. Gaza is completely harmless. Their concern was Iran, Hezbollah, and so forth. And as I said, there are two ways to restore your deterrence capacity. One is to inflict a military defeat, and the other is just to act crazy. And that's literally the case. If you open up Anthony Cordesman's quote-unquote strategic analysis of the Gaza war, he said the message that Israel wanted to transmit to the Arab world, to Iran, to Syria, to Hezbollah, was that we were capable of being, he uses the word, crazy. That if you mess with us, we're just going to annihilate you. That was the purpose of the war, to transmit, get out of line, get too uppity, and we are just going to turn you into a parking lot. And we don't care what world opinion says. That's what they were trying to do. So it had, in fact, everything to do, and that's why the Americans supported it. Because the Americans also worry about these Arabs getting too uppity. This Hezbollah, this Iran, and it obviously doesn't have a military option right now, the U.S. It's fixed on that economic crisis. It's focused now on the economic crisis. And the last thing, the Americans want to do now is to invade Iran, and then Iran blocks the Straits of Hormuz, and on top of everything else, the oil prices go through the ceiling. No, they can't handle that now. And so a stopgap measure is Israel restoring its deterrence capacity. But I completely agree with you. It had nothing to do with Gaza. It had nothing to do with the rocket attacks. As I said, it couldn't be clearer. If you didn't want rocket attacks, then why did you break the ceasefire? And if you didn't want rocket attacks, Hamas was saying, we'll resume the ceasefire if you ease the blockade. And what's now being negotiated? Right before our eyes, what's being negotiated? Easing the blockade. So why didn't you do that before? Because it had nothing to do with the rocket attacks. It was Israel desperate to try to show or to restore its, as Sharon put it, 40 years ago, restore